This episode of the Danger Close podcast is brought to you by
Cry Havoc, from New York Times #1 best-selling author Jack Carr. Cry Havoc, a Tom Reese thriller. Order now.
I think we just started dropping bodies, and they quickly, started falling back. So each night, I think we were kind of closing the noose, moving in closer and closer to the ring road. And I mean, that's really a surreal thing to, have the sun coming up and you're on a rooftop looking over this friggin', golden mosque.
Man, thanks for taking the time to do this. I'm so excited to talk to you.
Oh, I'm excited to be here, so thanks for having me.
Absolutely. I was so excited when we got connected and that I found out you had a book coming out, and thank you so much for signing this for me right here. And this is amazing. You are an excellent writer. Not just the stories in here, but the actual writing is excellent. Well done.
Awesome. Well, thank you.
Yeah. No, it's so cool to go back and it reads like, I mean, it's a history. It's so well done. It like takes you through the history of the time that you served in a way that's it's really unique. It's not just you telling stories. It's like I learned so much going through this and remembered so much going through this. And for those listening or watching, so we got to spend a little time in the same area back in 2004 and in Najaf. And before we get to that, though, I guess, should we go into your path to Det One? Is that the best way to go?
Yeah, probably so. I was, doing my, kind of reconnaissance on you and, looking through some things and realized that we've got, we have a lot in common. I mean, you decided at a very early age you're going to be a SEAL. I was the same with me with the Marine Corps. I think grew up with, just an absolute father that loved to read. And so, he was reading, Hardy Boy books and, Zane Grey and, Tarzan, all of these, all this stuff to me as a young kid until I could read myself. So I, had a love of reading from a very young age. And then, that continued through the Marine Corps as I, like I said, decided to join the Marine Corps at a very early age. So I started, and that back in the days when it meant, asking your parents to take you to the library and check out books. But, by the time I got into high school was really the Vietnam craze was on, and there was, in the movies, Chuck Norris.
Like Platoon's coming out. All those.
Yeah, all of those, First Bloods coming out. So that just totally.
Did you have military in your family? Did you have somebody in the Marine Corps that you could?
I didn't. I had, my father had been in the Navy, bosun's mate on a subtender. I had an uncle who was SF guy who actually was in MACV SOG, refused to talk about it. So it was, I knew enough when I saw some in a little shadow box that he had like back in the closet. I was like, man, I know what that is, right? Because I had a subscription to Soldier of Fortune magazine. But he wouldn't talk about it. And then after I read First Blood, and then the movie came out. I was like, man, Army Special Forces. I wanted to be a Marine, but Army Special Forces is gonna be it. And then ran into the Marine recruiter and learned about Force Recon. And he was like, hey, we got this thing that's even better. So, joined, and, as soon as I graduated high school, I was on a bus for Paris Island, South Carolina, and that was that. And, through a kind of a odd, series of either good fortune or mistakes, whatever, I wound up in my first unit in a sniper platoon, which was a rarity. I mean, normally you had to kind of put in your time and try out. And so I got kind of thrown right into the fire. Had to learn a lot really quick, and kind of went over, some guys who didn't want me there, or didn't think I deserved to be there. And honestly, I probably didn't, but, got a real, phenomenal education at a young age as a young Marine.
What were sniper school back then?
So I went, it was a few years before I went to sniper school, but,
Oh, so you're attached to the unit, and you just,
Yeah.
they're learning and getting kind of like Rangers, that you can go get attached, you can go to Ranger school and then go somewhere that's not a Ranger regiment, or you can go to a Ranger regiment and wait for your slot type thing. So it's similar to that. Okay.
So yeah, I was the young guy, so I had to wait and then fight for an opportunity to go. But I went to sniper school at Camp Pendleton in '89 as a relatively young corporal, and it was, the type of school that was, there's certainly no guarantee that you're going to pass it. About half of our class didn't. I did, and it kind of went on from there. I took a little kind of a break from that life. I kind of got lied to, if I'm being honest, about but embassy duty, what that entailed. And I thought I was going to be, operating as a sniper, for the CIA, and that was not at all what it was all about. Right? It was.
Was it more gate guard duty?
Yeah. It's. I mean, and I had a blast when I was doing it. I was in Budapest for a year,
Oh, wow.
like when it was coming down. I know I saw you were.
Yeah.
Filming over there.
Yeah. Beautiful.
My
I
wife
loved it.
back I met my wife there. She was an American school teacher, teaching the embassy kids. So we'd met there, went back on our 30th anniversary, and, changed a lot since, kind of the height of communism, but a really cool city.
Yeah.
It was there for a little while in Argentina at the embassy, and then came back, operated as a sniper, and then tried out and got into Force Recon, and spent really the bulk of my career there, kind of as point man through platoon sergeant.
Okay.
So
can you explain to people the recon, Force Recon, where you're attached, how you're used in the Marine Corps as a special operations guy?
All right, absolutely. So there's Recon Battalion, and they operate at the battalion level. So they're assigned missions from the battalion commander that they support. For force reconnaissance, we work for the force commander, whoever the guy in charge is of the landing force or expeditionary force. So in the case of my platoon, we were actually in Darwin, Australia on 9/11. So we're first night we'd had off. We'd been training with some Australians. Myself and the team leaders went out to a pub on Darwin Street or Mitchell Street, and soccer games on TV. We're slugging beers, and suddenly it changes to the first tower. And so we kind of know that, hey, this is not going to be your average deployment. So we got back on the boats, straight to Afghanistan. And so in that case, the task force commander was Mattis, General Mattis. So we were kind of taking our direction from him. So things that he wants to know, the information requirements that he has. So we did a lot of ground reconnaissance, a lot of route reconnaissance, kind of paving the way for the Marine Expeditionary Unit to move from where we were at what was called Camp Rhino up to Kandahar.
What vehicles were you guys using back then?
Primarily and we had just got the fast attack vehicles, the IFABs, the Mercedes G-Wagons, okay, which were not optimal for a lot of things. They actually worked out relatively well there in the desert. If there's not a threat of IEDs, things like that. Not a lot of room, for
Are those ones you guys had in initially with Det One also? Did you guys use those?
We did.
Okay.
We never used them, but that was,
I remember that.
I think because we had used them in Afghanistan, that's what the Marine Corps had. They said, hey, here's what, and the benefit of them was that they could fit into a helicopter. And that was beneficial for us in Afghanistan. But, as soon as you go to Iraq, they're not armored, so now you're going to be driving through urban areas, with a bunch of angry guys shooting at you or trying to blow up bombs. It was definitely suboptimal. So, they were relegated to drive into the chow hall, back.
That's right. That's why I remember them going to the chow hall, because that was right about the time the IED threat. Because at first there wasn't really 2003, and when did we get there? We get there in 2004. Yeah,
early 4.
Yeah. So 2003, there wasn't really the IED threat wasn't really there yet, and then I think they took out one of the guys that was kind of was going to be part of the Iraqi government. Some guy got taken out, and that led to the PSD, which I want to ask you about. But anyway, I remember the G-Wagons there, and I remember them just going to and from the chow hall, because then at that point, everything started to change. Like gun trucks are going to get up armored now, and no one's leaving the gate in anything other than an armored vehicle.
Yeah, even those early days, we're driving in Humvees on missions, because it was a command detonated IED threat, or maybe radio controlled, and we could deal with the radio controlled by jamming, and the command detonated, we and drove at night, really, really fast, blacked out. And generally that worked. But, later in 2004, 2005, the explosively formed projectiles started showing up. A lot of pressure IEDs started coming back, and those, are ugly.
Yeah, the enemy adapts. They adapt quickly.
Yeah.
With all my books, I start with a theme, with a premise. And for The Devil's Hand, it was really about what the enemy has learned by watching us at that time on the field of battle for about 20 years. So I'm starting to write this in early 2020. COVID-19 hits. Enemy is certainly learning something from our response to COVID. Then we hit a summer of civil unrest. Enemy, once again, is looking at that. They're drawing lessons. And then moving a very contentious election cycle. Enemy's learning from that as well. So all of those very current events got woven into the novel. In The Devil's Hand, Reese is carrying the SIG P365 XL. In this chapter, Reese is meeting with the Secret Service in advance of meeting the president. Sorry, I have to ask, are you armed? Pistol and blade, Reese said. I'll have to ask you to transfer them to your bag and leave it with us. You'll be meeting the president alone. Normally being disarmed made Reese extremely nervous, but this was anything but a normal situation. Of course, Reese responded, removing his holster and weapon from the appendix carry position. He wanted to ask additional questions, but held his tongue. Is that the XL? Sharp asked, admiring Reese's choice of weapon. Yeah, I've been running it for a few months with the red dot, and I have to say, I'm a fan. I've had my eye on one, but the missus thinks I have too many already. I've refrained from telling her she has a closet full of shoes that cost more and all look the same. Wise man, Reese acknowledged, as he unclipped the Amtac Northman blade from his pocket. And this is the SIG P365 XL. This is the one that came out around the time that I was writing the book, right there with a red dot optic. And I haven't put enough time on the red dot optic myself to have one of these be my daily carry. I still like the old irons just because I have so much time on the irons. But as I was writing this book, my intent was to put a little more time on the range with the red dot. That hasn't happened yet because I continue to write books. If I was to write this again, would he still carry the XL? There's so many more options out there now than there were when I wrote this. And you can go to the SIG custom shop, build your own, or you can just pick any 365 that you want. So the XL is an option. This is the one that I carry pretty much every day right here. And this is just the regular P365. There it is, right there. Super compact. Absolutely love this pistol. Or you could go for something a little different. You can go to the Custom Works shop on the SIG website and get something like this. And this is one where you choose the grip mod, you choose the barrel, the slide, the magazine, the optic. So that would have been an option for James Reese, or something like this. And this is the X Macro, P365 X Macro. And this thing, that is a sweet pistol. So that could have been an option for James Reese. Probably at the time, if this had been out, he would have done this. Or something else, a custom P365 from the guys at True Precision, like this one right here. This is a sweet pistol. So check that out. True Precision, that would have been an option. But I really like light rifles for some reason and heavy pistols. And this is the Legion P365. And this, that is a solid pistol. That is heavier right there than the others. And for me, I do love the heavy pistol. So what did you, how long were you guys in Afghanistan? You went right from Australia. Were you working with the clearance dive team? Who were you working with in Australia?
We were working with, the MEU was kind of training with different Australian units. We were just working with their soft snipers.
Okay.
Just doing a couple days of training. And so, pretty much we just turned around, went straight to Afghanistan. We were in country by November, mid-November. And then we were out. We handed over with the East Coast Marine Expeditionary Unit. So we were back on the boats in January.
Okay. So you had to come home on the boats.
Yeah. We came back home on the boats.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that's
so back to Australia, where they kind of, just told us, hey, come back in 5 or 6 days and don't burn the place down.
Yeah.
Because there was a lot of pent up frustrations, a lot of Marines with a lot of money that they haven't been able to spend. So the economy did well. The bars all did really well.
Yeah, I'm sure it was a good time probably a really good time. So how long did you guys end up being in Afghanistan that first pump there?
We were only there for a couple of months. It was pretty quick in and out. And then, as it seemed, the things were going to wind up obviously a lot quicker than they did. We had taken Kandahar, the 5th group guys, everybody up north had was doing a good job. It seemed like things were gonna wrap up. So the Marine Corps decided they only needed one Marine Expeditionary Unit. So East Coast took over. We got back on the boats and came home.
Wow. Did you feel like, wow, I'm so glad we got in here when we did, because this thing's going to be wrapped up in a few months?
Absolutely. I mean, that was, I told the guys, and we had, while I was there, the first for the Marine Corps combat action, and the only one that our MEU really had was, me and my guys were sent out to interdict vehicle traffic coming out of Kandahar. And so we set up a roadblock essentially, and just waited for vehicles to come. And there wound up being a vehicle full of Taliban and loaded with weapons and ammo and demo. And so we got into a little shoot 'em up with them. And before the fight, I told my guys, I'm like, man, I think I'm bad luck. I've been at this point in the Marine Corps for 14 years. I've missed out on the Gulf War. I was stationed overseas at embassy duty when that went on. Somalia, I was supposed to go, and that they decided not to send our unit. So I'm like, I don't think we're going to get shot at while I'm here. So the closest to a gunfight I had been in was a coup attempt that took place right when I got to Argentina and Buenos Aires. So I sat on the roof of the embassy with a sniper rifle, kind of watching, the little tank battle, things unfold there. But nothing directed at us. So that was definitely a turning point. The first time you get shot at and shoot back, it's you learn a lot, about yourself, about your leadership style, the training, that you've done, especially when you're in charge. You're responsible for training the guys, responsible for bringing them back. So it was, we were pretty happy that we got to go do something, and now we're heading home. And like I said, we assumed that things were going to wrap up. There's no way of knowing that they were still going to be going on 20 years later.
Wild. Oh man, what are you guys outfitted with at the time? And in that engagement in particular, do you have sniper weapon systems with you, or are you on M4s? And if you are, what kind of optics are you using?
Yeah, there for that in Afghanistan, we're primarily on M4s, and we had really only just we'd only had those for a couple of years. We had M16s before that, and then MP5s were, our kind of assault weapon, which you're a blast, but not the most
Right.
not the optimum weapon.
If you're going to magically arrive at your target door and not have to travel to get there, then it's it can work out. But if you have to travel and you get hit en route, or go down in a helicopter en route, or have to land somewhere, refuel, whatever, and things can happen, you might want something that reaches out a little further.
Yeah, not great for that, but yeah. So we were carrying M4s with aim points, and I think we were probably among the first in the Marine Corps to have those. That was
okay.
Our commanding officer had bought them like out of pocket.
Wow.
So yeah, M4s, aim points. Yeah, we were still carrying at the 1911s as our sidearm, and for sniper rifles we had the M40 was the only, and then the Sasser, the 50 cal. Okay. From Barrett, but that was kind of the only game in town, and we did a lot of manning sniper OPs, but no sniper engagements while we were there.
Yeah, interesting. You guys had the aim points on those at that time, and you had ACOGs in the system though, probably, right? Did you have ACOGs that you?
We did, yeah. They were out. Guys were using those. They were being fielded. We had them. And it was kind of mission dependent. You'd swap out, but I think at that point they were just being fielded to the infantry, so they were starting to come online.
Got it. And you guys still were you using the same sniper rifle that you went through sniper school with? Same type?
It was one. So we've had. I think I went through with the M40A1. So the original M40 from Vietnam was. Wooden stocked, Remington 700 short action with initially they had a Redfield on it, and they went to the kind of Unerdal that became the Marine Corps go-to for forever. Yeah. They upgraded it to the A1, which same basic configuration of the fiberglass stock, bull barrel, and that was. What I went through with I think by that point we were probably at the A2, just a couple of variants of adjustable stock and a few other odds and ends. But it really wasn't until I think I went through the A3, the A4, and it's before those got phased out.
Okay. Got it.
So it was not until right before we went to our deployment with Det One that we really started looking at something else. We deployed with the SR-25s, the Mark 11, night gas guns with the Horus scopes of the Horus reticle, which was absolutely unheard of. Yeah. At the time, I think we may have been the first people on DoD to deploy with them, as we had run into shortly before our deployment, we went up to the SHOT Show, a handful of us, and ran into Todd Hodnett, who's. He was working for Horus and kind of helped develop the system. And so we bought a bunch really quickly, had him come out and school us up on them, and deployed with, we took a lot of sniper guns with us there. So we took the 40s, we took the SR-25s, we took a Shy-Tac.
Yeah. I was going to ask you about that, because that is my memory, and I don't think it's any sort of a conflation or something. But I was going to ask you. I think you're the only unit. I mean, maybe a couple others tested them or something, but I think Det One was the first unit to field them and use them and take them downrange in that capacity. And I forget, is it the 408? Yeah, that's the one you guys had, because that's the first time I saw one when I was with you guys, and I was like, "Whoa, what are these things? These are incredible!" And you're like, "Yeah, we're just testing them out."
Well, Todd Hodnett had brought a couple with him when he was working with us out to Camp Pendleton, and we're like, "Hey, man, we need to get a couple of these." We bought them somehow. We had with the detachment, we had the incredible good fortune of bringing on board a procurement specialist from Natick Laboratories, who's a soft equipment guy, and he deployed with us. He throughout the deployment was able to find money, and figure things out. So we had with the detachment, kind of a test and evaluation charter. So we were authorized to do certain things. Taking those guns to combat was apparently not one of them, as I remember. We just bought ammo, and we just carry the ammo in a couple cans with us. And if you remember when we started getting mortared there in the compound, we set up a position in the hotel in the top of the hotel. And we were using that up there. And I remember one morning I'm sitting there behind the glass looking, and somebody came up and were like, "Hey, you got to download the ShyTech. We're not allowed to use them." Somebody freaked out, and they're not approved for Navy use, or there was some issue.
Come on.
And that lasted for about 48 hours. And actually, Commander Bill Wilson made some angry phone calls and got him back for us.
Oh, no kidding.
But it's a massive weapon. There really wasn't the requirement anywhere. We took it to Najaf, and one of my guys used it to take out a knucklehead that was shooting at us. But it absolutely wasn't necessary. It was like a 400-yard shot. The guy was behind a dumpster, so he just threw the dumpster through the trash.
Oh man, I can't wait till we get to Najaf. But I had a 350-yard shot with 50. So a little more than necessary. But the way that happened was anyway. Man, that's because that ShyTech was so cool to see it. And I've wondered one ever since, and I think I'm going to get one here pretty soon because it's in the next show. So we're procuring it for the next show that we're going to start filming here in March. But then I think I'm going to get one as well. I've always wanted one ever since I saw your guys back then in 2004. But
yeah, it's just a phenomenal cartridge.
Yeah.
The projectile is lathe turned, and it looks like it looks unlike any other round you've probably ever seen if you haven't seen one.
Yeah.
It's a little mini rocket.
Did they have the round first and then or something like that, and design the whole thing around the round or something like that?
I think so. I think he figured out the ballistic coefficient of a particular bullet shape and said, "Hey, let's try this in different sizes and different load configurations," and finally came up with that. But that was the brainchild, the round projectile anyway, of I forget his name, but the guy who invented the Horus reticle.
Got it.
Amazing. All the maths behind it to make the magic work.
Yeah. Introducing the BCM Stock Mod 3 and Marksman Risers. Built from years of real-world experience, the BCM Mod 3 stock is the next evolution in M4 accessories. Minimalist, snag-free, and just 6.4 ounces with double-walled H-beam construction for unmatched durability. Paired with the Mark III Marksman Risers in 0.5 and 0.8 inches. The Mod 3 offers total customization with 6 mounting positions and forward or reverse orientation. It delivers a consistent cheek weld for passive night vision or CQB. For high-ready weapons manipulation, it features a removable diamond textured butt pad, non-slip grip panels, and a quick adjust design with integrated sling attachment points. Plus, its patented internal latch system and ergonomic lever ensure rugged performance with tool-free installation. Proudly made in the USA, the BCM Mod 3 stock, built to outlast and outperform. Get yours now at BravoCompanyUSA.com. So we jumped ahead a little bit. So after your deployment to Afghanistan after September 11th, when do you start hearing rumors, or maybe not, they didn't end up being rumors. When do you start hearing about this thing called Det One or something along the lines of, hey, the Marine Corps is going to stand up this kind of SOCOM special operations, and maybe give us a little history on why the Marine Corps didn't have anything that fell under SOCOM before that in any real official capacity, I don't think. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, true. We had ones and twos assigned to SOCOM in different places, right. But it kind of really all goes back, the truncated history, to when SOCOM was formed following the failed Iran hostage rescue. The decision was that at that point all special operations units were operating independently for their service. So the two things that really came out of that were the creation of geographic combatant commands. So what we know as CENTCOM, it was formed, PACOM, all of these generals that, had a headquarters that owned a particular piece of geography. Prior to that, it kind of unbelievably, but it was actually the service chiefs that were responsible for employing the Marine Corps, or employing the Navy. And the Joint Chiefs of Staff obviously saying, hey, go do something. But, there was not, stationary geographic combatant commands. So that came out of it. And then I think it was the Nunn-Cohen Amendment that said, hey, we need to have a special operations component. And so that was formed in 1987, right about the same time I was joining the Marine Corps, although I was kind of oblivious to this. Mm-hmm. The Army obviously sent over the SF, the SEALs went over, Air Force, the PJs and CCT guys, and the Marine Corps kind of bowed out. Our commandant at the time was a guy named PX Kelly, who said, hey, we want to redirect the Marine Corps towards war fighting, and make sure be a force in readiness. So we want to be the people that are forward deployed at all times, and in order to do that, the force that would have gone to SOCOM would have been Force Recon. Mm-hmm. And he said, I need this as part of my quiver. Right. So the Force Recon platoon stayed with the Marine Corps, and everybody was happy with that, or not necessarily happy. We were not terribly happy at the ground level, but the Marine Corps has also never been fond of anybody that rises above.
Right. Every Marine rifleman, we're all special, like that sort of a thing.
And that's been fascinating history. Back to World War II with the Marine Raiders when they were activated. The Marine Corps was pushing hard against it. Mm-hmm. There was also around the same time, the Marine Corps was looked at. Actually, digging into history is really cool, to have been the OSS, what became the OSS. Mm-hmm. There was a lot there was a move to make Donovan, Bill Donovan, a Marine general, and put have him form a unit within the Marine Corps that would have become the OSS. Mm. The Marine Corps, obviously fought hard against that, and the OSS became its own entity. Although there was still a number, like 75 Marines that served in the OSS, but World War II was really this, kind of awesome time for special operations. And then, again, Vietnam was like this inflection point of really, just phenomenal work by special operators. And really up through that point is, at least, it was the way I read history and talk to people. I mean, everybody, missions were a little bit different, but everybody was kind of on even footing. The SEAL, I mean, really, SF teams had their thing. Force Recon was, really responsible for long range reconnaissance and a lot of call in and airstrikes, keyhole missions, snatch and grabs, things like that. Probably more similar to what the SEALs were doing than what SF was doing. They all worked pretty closely together. I think MACV-SOG, and we have a common friend in Tilt.
Yes,
Jan Stryker-Meyer, who I can listen to him talk about that.
So great, amazing.
But so there was kind of an even parity among the different special operations units up until SOCOM started, mm-hmm. and then once that happened, then the missions. We're going to go to SOCOM. Money went to SOCOM. And so Force Recon was kind of the bastard, stepchild in the special operations community for a number of years. But still, it was a phenomenal time to be there and be a part of it. Nothing I would have, done any differently.
Yeah. And for those listening, that really became apparent when it came to budgets and gear. And correct me if I'm wrong, but all that money coming through SOCOM filtered into those through the service special operations units that went to SOCOM, and then you guys were kind of at the mercy of Marines. Just the Marines. There was no SOCOM giving you money. It was coming down through the regular Marine channels. And a lot of those Marine channels, once, like we said earlier, weren't fond of anyone being different or better than, or perceived as better than or special. And so it seemed like some of the gear you guys got was a little bit outdated throughout let's say the 80s and 90s.
Yeah, it was. I mean, there wasn't a lot of money in the military in the late 80s and early 90s anyway. Things started to turn around, fortunately, or really kind of unfortunately. We had a helo crash in, oh man, 89, or I'm sorry, 99. They were doing a ship takedown, and your guys were coming from the bottom up. Our guys were coming in, and the helo snagged the safety net around the aircraft, or the ship, the Pecos, and went in, and at that point a couple of the Marines got out, but the crew, most of the crew, I think the pilot got out, but we had 7 of our guys die, and it's like 7. And then the Marine Corps was like, hey, we're asking these guys to do a mission that we're really not equipping them for. At that point, we were still wearing like LAPD bullet bouncers, big point blank vests, incredibly heavy, no way to get out of them. So I was happened to be in a position where I was sent to help the Marine Corps design new equipment, and that's really when like the Mali came out. It was called the full spectrum battle equipment. So we built body armor with cutaways, and that kind of led to a program that said, hey, let's modernize, let's get away from the MP5s, equip these guys with M4s and suppressors and optics. And so we had, we got a little plus up in the late 90s, which was fortunate because as we rolled into Afghanistan and the GWAT, we needed it.
Yeah. And were things in the works for SOCOM to form up, or for the Marine Corps to form up and then put under SOCOM a special operations command component before September 11th, or was September 11th a thing that really caused this to happen, caused Det One to come about?
Yeah, the way I gather, Rumsfeld after 9/11 just said, hey, we're going to need more SOF. Mm-hmm. And so I think you guys made more teams, SF grew, and the Marine Corps was told, hey, this time you're going to participate. And still the Marine Corps pushed back, and still SOCOM pushed back. The Army, the joke is that SOCOM spelled ARMY. Yeah. So the Army was like, nah, we're good. From what I gathered, there were certainly some naysayers within Naval Special Warfare, but I think largely they saw it as like, hey, if we combine the sister, sea services together, we'll have a little bigger chunk of the pie. So largely, NSW was supportive from what I saw from my seat, always at the deck plate level, right? The guys on teams, we get along, but there was, always a lot of institutional, but I was actually, I think, on the way back on the ship from Afghanistan when there was a rumor started that, hey, the Marine Corps is going to do this thing. Okay. And it was slow. It was very slow in happening. I got back, and at that point, I had been at First Force for, I think, almost 9 years. Mm-hmm. And they're like, hey, you've got to do something else. Yeah, you've got to move somewhere. So I moved right down the street to the Special Operations Training Group, and took over our advanced sniper and urban reconnaissance program. Okay. So I got to get back into my skills as a sniper. Got to really got to focus in on what we claim to be doing, reconnaissance, and learned a lot there that could that would wind up helping in Afghanistan operate more in urban environments. But I had been there for only a couple of months, and the commander there grabbed me and said, hey, man, as a guy named Bob Coates, Colonel Coates, that had been my boss at First Force, had been my boss at SOTG, and he was like, hey, I've been tapped to lead this thing. You want in? I'm like, well, what do you say? Obviously, I want in. When can I start? And so it was not. It wasn't there were a lot of growing pains, right? So he was allowed to pick from within Force Recon. Mm-hmm. And I was, as a team leader, I was kind of allowed to pick my guys. Okay. But I could only, couldn't pick guys that were deployed, couldn't pick guys that were getting ready to deploy. there were some, certainly limitations on who was available. So we, cat fights over between the teams picking who we wanted. At the end of the day, I wound up bringing in two guys who had gotten out of the Marine Corps. We brought them back in. I had two guys who were on deployment, taking Baghdad. We waited till they got back to join. And then, so we built this unit was initially slated to be 87 men. Of that, about 30 was a kind of a traditional force recon platoon. Another 30, which was what was really unusual, was our intel detachment.
They were impressive. You guys were impressive when I showed up there, and we'll get to that in a little bit. But that intel should have stood out because it was so different. It was more along the lines of something some other units in Virginia Beach and out of Bragg would have attached to them. And everybody that was attached, it was like the way you described how you were chosen. That seems like how the intel was chosen too. It was like everyone was handpicked for this. It seemed.
Yeah.
And everyone was like super solid, top of their game. It seemed. And when I walked in and saw that intel shop, I was like, wow, this is amazing. We should be doing this in naval special warfare.
Yeah, that was. I had never seen anything like that either. And those guys were. They were getting pulled back from NSA and from different places. So they absolutely cherry picked. So that was really an unusual aspect of the organization, and it brought so much to it. And then so that was really about 60 of the 78. So we had a very, very tiny headquarters, and we eventually grew to about 100. But we had JTACs and communications guys, and obviously a small headquarters, some logistics and admin, all the stuff you need to make things work. But yeah, we started up with absolutely nothing. With no home. We were kind of living in borrowed buildings and commissioned some temporary structures that are still in use out of Camp Pendleton. Nice. But no equipment. So when we showed up, it was it was kind of expected that you're a recon Marine. You probably have your own Alice pack, here. So that was one thing. They're like, load it down. We'll go ruck, and that was what we did. We'd do a 20-mile ruck every week, rain or shine, and just became increasingly more challenging. And then we were also just getting sent out to, hey, go. I was as the kind of the sniper lead. I was being sent out, hey, go find, weapons, equipment. I was kind of responsible for body armor and load carriage. So I was just, going to that guy I'd met at Natick that we wound up taking with us on deployment, and cherry picking from what other units had. So it was really a neat time. We had the opportunity to, and everyone within SOCOM was pretty good about kind of opening the doors of, hey, here's what we're using, see if this makes sense, from comm gear to optics and night vision and things. So it was a definitely once in a lifetime opportunity to start a unit from scratch, largely with not an unlimited budget, but one that wasn't an issue, which is a rarity in the Marine Corps.
Yeah, exactly. I think at this point the Marines are like, okay, essentially this is happening, so we might as well get behind it. And so we do everything we can to make this thing a success. It's not going to fail because we put the wrong people in, or because we didn't give them the equipment or the budgets or the time they needed to train. Or it seems like the attention was really focused on making this the best possible foot forward the Marines could possibly have going into SOCOM.
Yeah, the Marine Corps, and that's the Marine Corps way. They were against it until it was, once it said this is going to happen, they're like, well, we're not going to fail at it, right? So, and it was all of the money to start it up came from the Marine Corps. There was not SOCOM money put towards that. It was kind of a Marine Corps proof of concept that was necessary. So we spent we were given a year basically to get ready from a unit with no people in it to deploying to combat. And really, for the first 6 months, we were led to believe, or we chose to believe, that we were going to go to Afghanistan. Okay. And we were going to focus on deep reconnaissance, because that seemed to be an area that was really a problem set that's just hard. I mean, really, really hard. You can't go to Afghanistan and spend, more than a one night cycle out without somebody knowing that you're there.
Yeah.
It's just impossible, right? They know the land, and they know when something's off. So that's what we were training kind of hot and heavy for. And then in about 6 months, we got told, hey, you're going to deploy underneath the Naval Special Warfare Task Group, and you're going to Iraq. And the focus will be on direct action primarily.
Were you guys like, oh, man, got to be with the SEALs?
No, we like I said,
I would have been probably.
All of us had, in the days prior to 9/11, when we went on deployment, we deployed with the SEAL platoon. Yeah. So we had, a lot of good friends, in a lot of the teams, and we worked pretty well together. I mean, there was always, rivalry, vying formations and things like that, but, we usually got along really well with the SEALs. And it wasn't, like I said, there really wasn't a change, once we were attached. Yeah. We were still kind of looked at as the bastard stepchildren, but we're used to that. So
yeah, exactly. And at what point do you guys get the Kimbers, and how did the Kimber procurement come about? And getting the rails on there, and then having the Strider knife that went along with the serial numbers, like the whole thing. How did that come about?
Oh yeah, there was definitely some of the, like I said, some of that was just incredibly cool. So
do you have yours still, by the way?
Yeah.
Nice.
I don't have it on me. But I don't have the Kimber I took to combat, but they let us buy some. Mm-hmm. And all of those, unfortunately, were destroyed. The Marine Corps was like, hey, we're destroying all of these. So probably some of them got, exist somewhere, but so the Marine Corps could not outfit us with 1911s. I mean, we had been, using, leftover 1911s, most of them from 1911 or 1912, right? They were just, we've got some amazing match armors up in Quantico, and they were refurbish them, rebuild them, modify them and things, but they were really kind of at the end of their useful life. So we, how we did it, I don't know, but I had, Kimber had kind of come out as the new hotness, and I had bought a custom classic, I think, and was really impressed with it. And I think that's pretty much how it happened. I'm like, hey, I'm a big fan of Kimbers. Anybody got an issue with that? And I'm like, nah, man. So we went, and I think they could produce them, in they were small enough, where they could make a run of them, for us, to our specs. Mm-hmm. The only thing they couldn't do was put on the rail. Mm-hmm. So we had them made, we sent them off to McMillan. I think McMillan.
It was a Dawson rail, right? Or something like that?
Dawson, I'm sorry. Yeah, I sent them off to Dawson. And he, put all the rails on, got them back to us. And they, we loved them. I mean, they ran great. And we, now I think everybody has realized that, sometimes volume, trumps, just sheer badassery. But the 1911 is always will have a special place in my heart as a man stopper. But so the 1911s, and then we had Strider. Mick Strider and Dwayne Dwyer, the team behind Strider, had always been just right down the road from us. They were, Dwayne was a Marine. I think Mick was as well. And so, we knew him, hung out with them, and they came to us and said, hey, we can do this. We can make a knife, kind of commemorative, in a way that's, numbered, and they offset the cost by making an identical one with a C in front of the serial number. So it's a civilian variant, and they sold that for some outrageous price. And we still paid for the knife, but the government paid for the knife. Right. But it brought the price down into the realm of possible. So there was back at that time, when the internet was still relatively young, right, on like knife forums or whatever. There were guys like, hey, I want to, can I get a picture with, my knife. I was the team leader for Team One, so I was 4-1. So I got knife 41. And there was a guy on there. Hey, I got C41. And I want to link up with the guy. And like, yeah, no, we don't need to do that, buddy. But but it was a really neat time. It was a lot of people, bending over backwards to do things to make us successful and to to help us out across. We had a former corpsman who had started a gear company, relatively small scale, and he made all of our rucks. So, basically just Atlas packs, but, in tan, with kind of all of the mods that guys would make anyway. So there was a lot of, just a lot of it was based on relationships, people that we knew, companies that we knew that, made great gear. Eagle Industries, were responsible for a lot of our stuff. And we had kind of had a long relationship with them. So there were a lot of, Oakley, they were right up the road. So their, military guy was always down having us test things for them. So they, we were kind of outfitted with Oakley boots, Surefire, same thing, a local company. So across the board, we were definitely outfitted better than any of us had ever been outfitted before.
Yeah, I remember one of the guys from Surefire came out while we were on deployment, actually, because I remember I'd met him at SHOT Show, and then I was with you guys in Baghdad, and he passed through. I guess I must have had his email or something, or maybe ran into him randomly, but he came out and dropped off a bunch of stuff to try out, and I remember I gave it to guys and all that stuff. But because I was coming from the East Coast, from SEAL Team 2, and so I wasn't part of the workup or having an interaction with you guys because you guys were more attached to Team 1 on the West Coast, obviously. But when I got out there, and then we'll talk about how we ended up in the same spot, but that's when I became aware of the Kimber, and I was like, oh, man. And then guys are telling me, we got to they let us buy one. I'm like, no way, can we still do it? And then it was already done. It was closed out. So I didn't get a chance to get one, but to have that knife, and every now and then one of those will come up. One of the guys, I think guys could they buy more than one, or could you just get the one?
There was the first batch, the Kimbers. So we bought 100 from the debt. And then I think they said, we'll make another 100.
Okay.
And then somebody engineered a third round, and so that one grew a little bit.
Okay.
So I know, some guys bought multiples. A guy there was one recently. There's a former SF guy, Hackathorn, Dave, I think, Hackathorn, shooting instructor, old Vietnam era guy, that had one and sold his Kimber for $17,000.
Yeah.
They
used to be 10. They used to be 10. Then I saw one at 12, and I need to just grab one.
Yeah, I think the 17 was the most I've seen. I one of the guys from the debt had bought like 2 or 3 and just recently sold one for 10, I think. So I think that's kind of the going rate.
I need to get one.
Mine hasn't been out of the box, but it was the interesting thing about them was that it was the only, still to my knowledge, the only pistol that's ever marked U.S. Marine Corps, because the previous ones are all marked U.S. Army, because the Army buys them all and they give us some, or Navy.
Okay.
It was and there was the serial numbers were Det One, dash. Like I said, mine is 041, I think,
so cool.
Or 141 because it was in the second batch. But
that's awesome. Oh, and I think it's the lowest production run of 1911s or any pistol ever done for a military unit in the United States anyway.
Yeah.
I think it fits that category
as far as it was, unless something has changed at the time, it was definitely that.
I bet it still is, but I mean, who knows? But I would guess that it still is, because it's not every day that you stand up a new unit like this and give them, hey, outfit yourselves, that doesn't come along every day. Amazing. So you guys are doing all this, you're training up, you're probably going to different schools, getting ready to go. You find out you're going to go to Iraq, not Afghanistan, but you still have the mobility package or the vehicles that are set up for Afghanistan, and really not for Iraq, especially as things are changing. And then what is it like when you guys land in Baghdad? do you know you're going to be doing DAs? Is Colonel Coates, do you already know that he's going to go and take command of essentially another unit and leave Craig Kaczynski? Shout out to Craig, by the way, amazing guy. And I know we can say his name because it's in the book. And what a great guy. He came to see me on book tour, which was great. And so you guys land. Did you guys already know that Colonel Coates was going to go and do something essentially else?
Yeah. We found that out. That he was going to be sent to do something else, because they didn't want there to be any concern with the chain of command, essentially. So we were working as a task unit under the task group commanded by, like I said, by Lieutenant Commander then, right? Bill Wilson.
Right, Commander then,
Commander.
05. Yeah.
Commander. And then later Captain, who was, I didn't have any interaction with him before we got in country, but the first thing that he did was said, "Hey, we're going to, you guys have all this intel, so I'm gonna take a bunch of it and farm it out to other SEAL teams," which initially, of course, we're pissed about, right? But what wound up happening then is we had our guys all over the country, right? We had like this network that was unbeatable. Right, because we had guys in the green zone with all of the organizations that get retracted in your books. We had guys with a bunch of the SEAL teams, and so it gave us this web of access to information that was kind of unmatched in the country at the time, which we needed because we showed up and we were not replacing another. We weren't replacing anybody. And normally, when you'll do a RIP TOA, a new unit shows up, you have somebody that's like, "Hey, here's all the targets that we didn't get to execute, or here's all of the target packages that we're building, but we're not there yet." Mm-hmm. So we didn't have any of that. So we were told, "Hey, make your own luck," essentially. Mm-hmm. And it was the intel guys that did that, to a man. So they started, calling between each other, and it really, the first mission that we did, not your typical, not your typical mission, but it was evolved from one of the intel analysts who was just pouring through intel reports and found that a note that an Iraqi interpreter who was working with the U.S. had been murdered. And he was like, wait a minute, I thought I read about another interpreter. And so he starts digging through and came to realize that like 17 Iraqi interpreters had been killed over a pretty short span of time. And as, intel guys do, he started making like a map and realized that there was like 7 degrees of Kevin Bacon, right? All pointed to this one other interpreter. Mm-hmm. So like all of them were connected. And the interpreter in question was a woman. So we get called in and they're like, "Hey, the first mission that we're going to do, is we've got to go find this woman." So all the team leaders are, "Hey, I want to do it. I want to do it." I was the junior team leader at the time. I mean, most of the other guys had been in a little longer than me, but I had also been the guy that was, doing anytime there was a reconnaissance mission or anytime there was kind of an oddball tasking, during training, I'm like, "Hey, we'll do it. We'll do it." And so this time I'm like, "Hey, fuck you guys." Right. This is right up our alley. So, I wound up taking, myself, I took a SEAL with me who had some familiarity with the area, who had been there for a while. One of our human folks. And because we were dealing with a woman, we had to borrow a female operator from the GROM, from the Poles. So it was absolutely, the first Marine mission in SOCOM was a coalition effort. Wow. So we're in broad daylight, civilian clothes, some rental cars that we had lifted from the rental lot at Baghdad International, just cruising through downtown Baghdad to locate the contract companies' facilities, stop in there, talk to them, and they give us the woman's location, which is another half hour outside of Baghdad. And I'm on the sat phone with Craig saying, "Hey, sir, let us proceed." He's like, "Yeah, go." So, she's not working there. To go to another place, she's not working there. The third place that she tells us that she had worked there up until 2 days ago, and she'd quit, which seems a little suspicious anyway. You know, we were able to convince them to tell her to come in and pick up her last paycheck. And so, a couple hours later, she comes rolling through the gate with a man driving the vehicle. Walks in the building, and Kate, the Polish Grom operator, the Poles are a little more hands-on, generally speaking, than we are. So next thing you know, this lady comes out, sandbag on her head, cuffed, stuffed into the car. We grabbed the guy as well and brought him back with us. And at that point, we were still able to run our own interrogation facility. This was before Abu Ghraib kind of changed things. But, that people were much safer, I think, in our facilities than they were in Abu Ghraib. But, it quickly became apparent to us that the lady was responsible, but unwittingly responsible. So she had, it was like a reverse honeypot thing. Guy had met her, started, asked her out, and then started saying, hey, can you give me I need to hire some interpreters. I work with Americans. Can you give me either like a home phone roster and recall roster? So this guy was, just going around clipping them. So once she found that out, she became, like the hell hath no fury like a woman scorned sort of thing. And was like, pointed us to his house, his place of business. And so our first real kind of mission was rolling him up. Pulled him out of his house, his business. We found, a bunch of bomb making materials and things like that. And that, started just leading, building the chain. So that from there, we were never at a lack of missions. So, we kind of made our own luck, all based on the back of or the mind anyway, of an intel analyst that just wouldn't quit,
Wow. That's amazing. I think I know who you're talking about. We'll say his name just in case he's still out there doing the job.
Yeah.
But actually, we had a HET, so which I believe stood for Human Exploitation Team. I think, up in Mosul. So I guess they came from you guys. We were in Mosul, so I guess they came from you guys. And then not too far into that one, that would be 2004. I don't know, still spring, maybe early summer. I forget exactly, but. Hey, we're all going to Baghdad to take the PSD. And I was in the book. Did you guys initially get assigned to PSD?
Yeah.
You did?
Yeah,
okay.
We had the Kurdish vice president.
Okay.
They had a president, two vice presidents, one of which was Kurdish. His name was Rais Shawaiz. Really good guy. I mean, he had fought, his parents had fought, against Iraq. And we were responsible for him for the first week or so.
Okay.
And I was running the advanced team for him. And after about a week, we got one of the HVTs that we had been tracking. Something kind of popped up on him, and they pulled us back to start hitting them. There had been a real, like a spate of bombings. So we had been tracking this bomb maker. He showed up on the radar, so we got pulled to go after them. And that was kind of in preparation for the election. There were concerns that, or the ratification of the interim government.
That's it.
I guess it was.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and because I forgot that you guys did that. So you never went back to doing the PSD after you.
Oh,
okay, good for you guys. Yeah, I forgot that because we came down and started setting that up with nothing. I remember being in the palace with my CO. He'd come in from different places, and we started putting the PSD mission together with one laptop and him sitting there, me transcribing some notes. Anyway, it grew into the monster that it became during that deployment, and then we stayed with it on the Naval Special Warfare side for a long time. But it was interesting having really no background in personal protective services, whatever. and now having to protect the interim Iraqi government. And correct me if my memory is off. I believe we got the mission because somebody was killed. Someone blew up that they thought was going to be a part of that. And then they're like, whoa, we need something. We need protection for all these guys. Bring in all of special ops, bring in the SEALs, essentially, and have them do it.
Yeah, I think that's right. We had, it was always a mission that we would get, randomly, with very little training, like you said. Just immediately after 9/11, the first stop that we made when we left Australia was East Timor. Mm-hmm. So the East Timorians were ratifying they'd finished this bloody civil war, and they were going to ratify their constitution. And there were threats against, some of their folks, but because this was like 9/13, I think. So they were concerned for the Fibron commander, the MU commander. So my platoon, and, I got to pick some guys in the SEAL platoon I was with. We were in East Timor running a security detail, and I think I talk about it a little bit in the book. I'm like, shooting skills are something that lends itself, obviously, to a security detail. But, as shooters, we're not well suited to the mentality necessarily of, not starting a gunfight when somebody tries to invite you to one, So the idea of just protecting a principal, getting them in the car, getting them off the X is, and not going back and winning the fight is not, we're not the best at that, I think,
after that deployment, then we started getting the real training. The people that came to relieve us after that, they were trained up because they knew they were going to take that mission. So then they started focusing on it, but we didn't have a background in it. Actually, after 9/11, me and one other guy, Brian, it used to be called Commander Singpack Fleet. Remember that? And then I think Rumsfeld or somebody said, hey, there's only one commander in chief, and that's the president. And so they changed the name, but it's essentially the commander of all forces in the Pacific. And right after 9/11, he had to fly to a few different places in his region to kind of shore up alliances. So Philippines and Indonesia, a couple of places. But he didn't have a protective detail. So they're like, you voluntold, because we'd done some driving schools and done some things. And so him and I did, but we didn't know what we were doing. We were like just putting guns and knives everywhere. So we looked like a formidable force, which wasn't really the right thing to even do, but we didn't have any training for it. So that was just a couple of days after 9/11, maybe the day after. And then we came back and went and did shipboarding operations out of Kuwait. But interesting mission. Glad I got to have maybe a little just taste of it, the PSD mission. So when do you find out that Najaf is going to cook off? I forget if we knew ahead of time, I can't remember, or if it was kind of like, hey, Big Army's doing a campaign to retake this city, particularly Old Town Najaf. The Jaish al-Mahdi militia is down there, and we've given them notice. And now Big Army's going to come in, 27 Cav, is that right? Going to come through, and we're going to root out these insurgents. And I forget if we knew ahead of time or not. And
I don't think we did. I think there was a message.
I remember it being very
like asking for sniper support, like soft sniper support.
Yeah, that's it.
Because everybody, we got 5th group, who we were kind of co-located with, said, hey, we're going to go. I went into breakfast one morning and just got told, hey, grab some guys. You're going to go to the Najaf. You and 5th group are going to drive out together. So we, put together some guys, our gear to last for a little while, and really without any solid direction, on who we were supporting, exactly where we were going. And so we rolled into the headquarters, I guess the brigade headquarters on the outskirts of Najaf.
Camp David? Was that Camp David?
Yeah.
I think so. It's been a while.
Just walked into the COC, found there was a colonel standing there.
Colonel Rainey, right?
Yeah, Colonel Rainey.
Yeah, he was great.
Said, hey, can you use some snipers? And he's like, oh yeah, your guys are gonna go over here. So we, went out. I think stayed the night, the first night, and then got, inserted ourselves the following night and got busy.
Yeah, and I'm trying to remember if I came up to Baghdad to get attached to you guys before that, or if that's why I went up there. Now that I'm thinking about it, I can't really remember, because I was with you guys for about a month, maybe a month and a half. And I can't, anyway, I think I was already there. I'm not positive, but let's go with that. So I think somebody in your intel shop was going back to teach in the middle of deployment for some reason, going back to teach at Special Operations University, which I think is in Tampa in Florida somewhere.
Yeah.
And so he was leaving. He was what was it called? Future operations, future intelligence. Yeah. Anyway, some part of the intelligence shop that you guys had put together. And I think that I went up to take that spot because we're doing the PSD mission. We have it set up. It's running smoothly. And then there was that request from Team 1. Hey, we have this guy going back. We need this. Do you have any bodies down there? And I'm a junior officer at the time doing the PSD mission, but they send me up there. And that's where I meet Craig Kaczynski, and I meet all the guys, and meet the intel shop. And I remember a guy, I can say his call sign because it's not his real name, Hobbit. Remember, Hobbit was like did the air stunt coordination and all.
Our guy.
So I think I was doing that, and I think then Najaf kicks off, and I think I was in the right place at the right time. They brought some other SEALs up, I think, and because I was a prior enlisted sniper, they attached me with a group of SEALs, and so we go down there. We jump on the helos, and I think we went down separately because I think I didn't. Yeah. And we went to separate areas of the city, so we weren't with each other. But I think
we drove.
Oh, you drove. Yeah. That's right. I remember that now. You guys, yes.
Not sure why we did that, but.
And I was like, why didn't you take a helo? I remember thinking like, why do these guys drive?
We were driving with fifth group, and it was not I don't know that anybody had actually made that traverse. So, it was a real, we'd run into a bridge that was blown, like, all right, well, fuck, how are we going to, pulling out maps and trying to figure out how to get around it. So it was a long, long drive. Helo would have been better.
Somehow I got the helo ride. And so, so we all go in, and we have one officer who's an 03 who does like coordination stuff. So he's at wherever the headquarters is, not at the Camp David place with Colonel Rainey, but whatever the next level was that was kind of keeping track of things. And then we just got thrown together from all the different teams. So SEAL teams. So we go down, same thing though. I find Colonel Rainey. I walk into his office and say, "Hey, we're here to support." And he's like, "What can you do?" I'm like, "Well, here's what we can do. Here's our sniper capabilities, and here's what we can do. Here's all our guys are, TAC Ps or whatever, and we can call in air, and we can pre-plan air. So here's what we can do for you." And I think you guys had one section of the city. Grom, I think, had another section.
Yeah, Grom did.
Yeah, we did, and then SF did. So there was those.
Yeah. So we had it. Yeah, we definitely had it blocked off, and we were. When we got there, the 27 Cav guys were, and I'm sure it was the same thing with you, were like, "Hey, we're only allowed to go to this street. Anything beyond that, we can't shoot that way. We can't," because there was significant concern about damaging the mosque. Right, the Ali Imam Ali Mosque is where the Mahdi army is holed up.
Eventually, not at the beginning though. We had to push them back.
Yeah, no, not so well. I said we kind of put them there, I guess, once we started attriting the force. And that was really obviously they knew where the U.S. could go and where they couldn't. So, the first night that I think we kind of all got in, and the sun came up, it was a target rich environment. I think we just started dropping bodies, and they quickly, started falling back. So each night, I think we were kind of closing the noose, moving in closer and closer to the ring road. And it was, that's really a surreal thing to, have the sun coming up and you're on a rooftop looking over this friggin', golden mosque,
that was crazy at the end. That was like really, the last day. Yeah. There's a lot of days before that though. I forget. We were there for I want to say, was it 11 days? Because I think it had kicked off like a day before we got there, maybe, or 2 days before we got there, if memory serves. And then we start inching forward. And I do remember that brief that I got about not going forward of lines. I remember who it was that told me too. And I immediately threw that out the window because it didn't make sense to follow that. I'll call it a directive rather than an order, although it was definitely put in no uncertain terms to me.
Yeah, I think I asked. I don't think it applied to us. I took it as it didn't apply to us. So
I'll say that I did too. Although I was like told directly, you will not do this. And within like an hour of being there, I had done exactly that, pushing forward, running forward through the streets, setting up those new positions, bringing in the Bradleys, the Abrams, and all the rest of it, which was crazy to be able to maneuver those types of assets. Just crazy.
Yeah. I mean, that was, just, a lot of that, felt like World War II.
It's exactly. That's how I describe it also. The movies that I've seen of World War II.
We started, we're kind of putting our brains together, putting our heads together. We're, trying to think back to the sniper tactics and things of like Vasily Zaitsev and, the Stalingrad, Leningrad campaigns and the, periscopes. I'm like, man, we need periscopes. Why they used to have them. Why don't we have them anymore? And so, now, it's a very common thing that, snipers spot, shoot, with periscopes, taking, pulling a brick out, chipping away and
loopholes.
Yeah. Just, and then 2 shots, putting it back, move to another room,
and the enemy was doing that too. Do you remember that in your sector? Were they doing that? They were doing that in ours.
Yeah, we had, and so they had enough time to kind of do some preparations, and they had, a robust sniper capability. Not necessarily the most well trained, but they had, there were intercepts that said that we had eliminated. We kind of collectively, a lot of their snipers. A lot of guys that they were calling snipers. A lot of them. And one of the, I think the second morning, maybe, we were taking shots, through the windows that we were in the front of the building, and sitting there trying to find the guy. And then we see like some dust fall and a brick comes out.
Yep.
The guy takes a shot, puts it back in, moves to the next. And so we had brought, actually we had our Sasser, the Barrett, and there was an Army guys in the Bradley that had one, and they were kind of itching. They were like, hey, if you guys, if you can use this, call us up. So we called them up. We let this guy keep taking his pot shots, and we set them up in 2 positions. We're like, next time you see a brick come out, and they two 50 cals with Rofus, exploding, 50 cal rounds, just kind of talking guns. I think they both went through like 2 bags and just dropped the wall on this guy. So it was a sight to see.
Amazing. Because our 50s were the McMillan stocks, Remington 700 action. So they were different than yours. So yours are auto loading, obviously. Ours were bolt action. So those are the ones we had. But yeah, so I remember starting out 50s, then we had our 300s, but then the workhorse really became the Mark 11 and Mark 12s. I think we had Mark 12s at the time, regardless, Mark 11s at least, SR 25s. And those really became the workhorses, it seemed, of the whole, that.
Yeah, that was what I was carrying, and that was the perfect case to be made for a gas sniper rifle. At that point, especially in the Marine Corps, there was a lot of people that, you can't have a gas sniper rifle. It's not as accurate and this and that. But, in a fight where I don't think we took any shots beyond 400. Absolutely. Most of them were within, most of them probably could have taken within M4. Right. But, the ability to have a good scope, good glass on it, dial it in, and make certain you're gonna hit what you're shooting at was and then rapid follow up shots, obviously. So yeah, that definitely proved its worth.
Yeah, being able to then also use it to push forward, fight through the streets, move into other buildings, clear rooms, move your way up, all of that. Just having that auto-loading capability in a gas gun. That was one of our big lessons learned. I think our guys took a really long shot that first day when we got there, I believe. And then after that, everything. One guy took a shot. I'm like, did you use your SIG? You know, because it was so close. But it was really interesting, and I learned so much. And that was like 11 days of pitched urban street fight. And it did remind me of movies I'd seen with my dad, World War II movies, where everything's crumbling everywhere and there's just dust in the air and it's constant fighting and there's aircraft coming overhead, fast movers, there's helos. We called in, I think, AC-130. We had different fast movers, and then helos came in. I think was it an Apache or I think a Cobra we called in once.
Yeah.
I think it was wild. I mean, it was surreal almost.
Yeah, we brought in Cobras. Same thing. AC-130. I still have some good video that they sent us or maybe I think we took it through a thermal. Yeah, just nice. Some awesome footage of them coming in and leveling buildings and guys running around. Yeah, it was, there was so many lessons learned, the things that we'd kind of forgotten. I mean, we were, my spotter, Mike, right the first 5 minutes we set in, we took a round that hit right in front of him, kind of tumbled and got a little bit of gravel basically in his hand from, and we're like, shit, they have snipers, and they have snipers that are, have some idea what they're doing. I'm like, man, let's put a helmet on it. Let's try the helmet on the stick thing, and we were doing that, with guys behind glass and found them and eliminated them. But there were just so many things that were, things I'd read about, and that's, another one of the values of reading, right? Like, man, I remember, I read about this, let's try this. Let's see if this works. Yeah. So a lot of, glass on a lot of the OPs we go into, we were so small of a team that we really didn't have a lot of ability to put security, down on the first floor, when we were up on the 7th or the 8th or whatever the case was. But, I'd read like glass on the steps, something you're going to hear, was, something we read about. And there's plenty of, obviously plenty of trash.
Like a light bulb, like the light bulbs on the steps type thing. Break the light bulb. Yeah.
Cans on a string, all sorts of things I'd read about or other guys had read about, and all worked out really well.
Yeah, it's because we always had. I think we were not always, but a lot of it. I remember having Army guys with us. I think part of them were 2-7 Cavalry. We also had. Was it from Oregon, like a reserve unit or something? Anyway,
it was. Yeah, there was some reservists out there.
I think so.
I think snipers
or National Guard, maybe. Or anyway.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure the snipers that we had that 50 cal were reserve or National Guard.
Okay.
We had a couple of them, but it was the first night we got into the biggest building around, and it was there weren't. Most of them were like 3-4 stories. Mm-hmm. Probably, but this was probably 6-7, and it was clearing that whole thing up, and then I think we had 2 of them. So I didn't want to have them on the ground floor, and we're up on the 6th or 7th floor. So we put a lot of early warning devices and then and brought them up closer to us so that they'd have some security as well. But yeah, it was a phenomenal opportunity to.
It really was.
One, practice what you've learned for a lot of years, and like I said, I had been in a sniper platoon since January of '88, and went to sniper school in '99 or '89, and that was the first time I got to use it. Quite a few years later. So it was good to be able to do that, to kind of validate all the things that you learned, and like I said, it was working with I remember we were talking with the Poles, I think talking with you guys, and just the ability to coordinate among the teams that were where they were in the city was a really fascinating thing.
It really
to watch
was.
unfold. And really, the between the 2-7 Cav, who would have had to have gone in, and entered the mosque, and the Mew that was on the outskirts on the far side of the cemetery.
Mhm.
When you think back about it, we basically prevented that. We prevented the necessity from them from really doing a lot of very, very ugly, street fighting that would not have ended well for anybody.
Man, yeah. I mean, that was quite the experience. And being able to, did you guys jump in the back of Bradley's and move around? I think you did. I think you talk about it.
Yeah.
In here, in the book. But getting in the Bradley's, I think I'd been in them before, but maybe it was just training or something. I can't remember ever doing it for real, but I remember being in those things and you pre-plan it out ahead of time. Okay, you're going to move here. This is where you're going to let you off. And the Abrams is going to be here. It's going to level this building and, blah, blah, blah. You're going to let you off here. And then we're going to take this street and these buildings, and then we're going to move that logistics train up with water, with more ammo, medical, all that stuff. Okay, then we hold there, and then we'll reevaluate, and then the next day push forward again and do that. But doing that planning and then actually doing it, leaving some snipers up, and we'd flip flop. I'd jump into the street, and we'd push through the streets with half of our team, and do the push them back, push the Jaish al-Mahdi militia back, and then we'd take positions, and then these snipers would come down and then join us. But getting in the back of those Bradleys and then moving around, and I got like, what are we doing here? I thought we were going like straight, left, right, but they're moving all over the place. I'm totally disoriented. Then the back drops, and it's like, okay, here we go. And bullets are flying, and it's crazy, and it's daylight, and it's just total chaos. And you jump out, and you're trying to figure out where all the gunfire is coming because you're in the city, and it's just echoes everywhere, and RPGs and mortars and everything else. It was insanity, but it was a good time.
Yeah, I remember on one of those times we were moving up, and we're like, hey, can you guys, we want to enter this building, but there wasn't a door on that side. Like, is there anything you can do? And the tank's like, yeah, I could do that. And it just lowered the muzzle and just made a door.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you very much.
I know. It was crazy doing those things, but it did feel like you were in a World War II movie, just because it looked like the scenery that we'd seen as kids watching those films growing up. It was so wild. And so for those that are wondering what happened, and also refresh my memory here if I don't have this right. So we push forward each day. So it's like 2-week campaign. I remember being there for 11 days. We push forward, and then eventually the enemy keeps falling back each day. It's nonstop gunfight the whole time, day, night. You're sleeping maybe for grabbing a little cat nap here or there. When there's a lull, maybe you're trying to figure that out, because you're not exactly sure at that point how long you're going to be there. And so about 11 days, and then we set up, and there they all are in the Imam Ali Mosque in Old Town Najaf, one of the holiest sites in all of Islam. And we have it surrounded for the most part. And they're in there. And then I remember I asked if we could level it. I remember negative. And then I remember shooting, because they were talking to each other through those, the call to prayer. Yeah, the minarets, talking through the call to prayer thing, but they're coordinating through that. So I remember shooting those off with the 50. Yeah. Then there was a deal made, right, between the interim Iraqi government and the Jaish al-Mahdi militia, where they're supposed to lay down their arms, and then I think an Iraqi National Guard unit or something is going to come in and kind of accept I don't think it was a surrender. I think it was a lay down the arms and walk away.
They were allowed to kind of walk away away, whatever the case was. I think they brought in the National Guard, that kind of manned, the gate, and they came out of the mosque, checked for weapons, and they were allowed to walk away. Yeah. So it was unfulfilling, in a lot of ways. Do
you remember watching them? Remember watching them through scopes, watching them walk away? Yeah.
Yeah, and just, wanting, so badly, like, hey, we need to do something about this. But
we were just fighting these guys the last 11 days.
Yeah, very adamantly being told that no, you will do nothing, stand down. And I think we got pulled back as that was happening. We just got told to get out of there. We had we had gotten there was one high value target that we had been tracking for a long time, for the whole deployment. Really, it was one of the things that one of the only pieces of information we were given when we got there was that, hey, there are these two guys, and we had already captured one of them, and we came back to reconstitute in time to go after the second one. And that was, I think it was the last mission that we did. It was like daylight raid in the middle of one of the outlying areas in Baghdad, but it definitely not the sort of place you wanted to be. Really, really cool. And it was another time when our human exploitation guys had were responsible. They had developed a source. We're able to get that source very, very close, to this guy, and he was able to let us know that he was coming out to this restaurant to eat lunch. And so when I got called, because we'd been in Najaf, they're like, "Hey, you guys don't shave, not at me. I'm not going to pass off as anybody." But we had a couple of our guys that, real dark hair that could ride in the front seat of a car and drive a car and not, seem too out of place. Right. So that we got pulled back, spent a couple of days, coordinating this, and then rolled up this guy. He was one of the deck of card guys. I mean, so he was really one of the last kind of big wigs that was that had been running around. So we got pulled back for that before or as all of that was happening.
Okay, we must have been pulled off it, because I remember watching them leave through a scope, but I don't really remember much between that and then leaving. I remember taking a picture with the team, and we had flags, and we had captured weapons and all that stuff. So we'd take a photo, and I remember it was night, and I remember those guys were released out of the mosque during the day. So that night, I think we took that photo, but none of us had showered or anything yet. So maybe we did stay out there for a bit. Just kind of unbelievable to watch all these guys just walk away that we've been fighting for the last 11 days. That was why. And do you remember, correct me if I'm wrong here also, the rules of engagement. So there's theater rules of engagement, is my understanding. But those can be interpreted by a commander, depending on a campaign or a situation or a mission. I think I might have that wrong legally, but that's kind of my that's how I remember it. And so I think they told us when we got there that and I'm sure this is out there in some history somewhere, and that the army had given the people of Najaf 2 weeks or a week or something to get out. Like they'd said, "Hey, we're coming in to root out Jaish al-Mahdi militia. There's going to be a big battle here, and we are coming in. You have X number of days, whatever it was, to leave." And I think they did leaflet drops, and they went through flew over, and anything they could do. So I believe that and jump in if I'm remembering this wrong, or if you remember it at all. I think the commander's interpretation of the theater rules of engagement were that now essentially anyone down here is a bad guy.
Anybody, yeah, it was
right?
declared hostile.
Yes, yes.
It was a ghost town. I mean, that whole
the whole city.
I remember the first night as it was, sun was coming down. We got into position, and there was this old man came out, like ran across the road, and we're like, "Huh." I'm like, "Man, I mean, he was an old guy, I was like, man, I'd really." I'm not really interested in clipping some old civilian that's just, either too stupid or didn't have any way to get out of town. Like, but, I mean, maybe he's reporting on our position. There's no way of knowing. And I'm like, we're absolutely within our rights. Like, if he comes back across, man, I'll do it, because I don't want to pin that on anybody else. But if he runs back across the road, I'm gonna take him out, and he didn't. But that was, I think, one, that was the interpretation of the rules, and two was that beyond that ring road, snipers or special operations troop, however it was interpreted to me, that were the ones that allowed to engage targets kind of in vicinity of the mosque. So that's what I was going with anyway. Maybe that's what I made up in my head. I don't know.
No, I think that squares with my memory, even though it's been a couple of years. You know, it's crazy to think that it's been over 20 years. Crazy.
Been a while.
Yeah, it's so crazy.
20 years.
But it's crazy that you had a similar experience. So I remember one of those things where we're moving during the day, we're fighting through the streets and moving to the next block, to take the next block. And we're crossing a street. And I look back the way that where Big Army is set up with water and supplies and all that stuff. So way back behind the front lines, essentially. And I look and I see a guy on a bicycle and he's dressed like in black, but he's on like a beach cruiser. And he's like riding this beach cruiser like you would ride it on vacation in Coronado, California type thing. And I'm like, and I have him in my sights, off safe, finger on trigger. But I'm like, he's not in any rush to get, I mean, there's a battle going on.
Yeah.
And he's not running from the battle. He's just in the middle like this, just like kind of, I thought this is so weird.
Yeah.
And
you see a lot of strange shit, you know?
A lot of strange stuff. And I remember I'm like, within the rules of engagement, I feel like this is, well, anybody was everyone's hostile, like you said. That was the interpretation. And I thought, this doesn't feel right to shoot this guy in the back as he's just kind of nonchalant, moving away from the battle. But he is moving towards, other Americans. So I put it on safe, check up, and get on my embedder, and I call back and say, hey, there's a guy that's coming your direction. He's on a bicycle. Looks like an old man. Just describe it. And then I move across the street and keep going and continue on with my day. But I'm glad that I didn't take that shot. And afterward, in the years after, and the days after, and the weeks after, I always thought, I'm glad that I didn't do that. Yeah,
I kind of thought the same thing about that old guy. I'm like, man, I don't know. Should I have taken it? Should I have not? It's one of those things.
Yeah.
You got to take plenty of shots, during that time there. So
yeah, that was crazy. And then the other one that stands out to me from this is we're doing the same thing. We're moving through the streets, crazy battle going all around, and we're in this little courtyard. And so me and I think it was three other guys, so 4 total. The other guys are back. Like I said, they would hold up in elevated positions. We'd go out with the Army, shoot, fight through the streets, whatever. And we're in this thing and we're looking at each other like, can you believe this, that we're in the middle of this battle? This is insane. And we're looking at each other like, this is crazy. Because as you know, like we usually choose the time and the place of the engagement in special operations. And usually it's late at night, not always, but usually it's like 2 a.m, 3 a.m, and you blow someone's door open or whatever, and you go grab them out of bed and bring them back to base for questioning. And then you just, you get some intel and maybe go out again, maybe not. But you're choosing the time and the place for the most part. And here it was just 11 days of fighting. But we're looking at each other like that. And then there was a really thick wall. And we're like, well, where are we going to go? Kind of like getting our bearings. Like, we're moving this way. And we go and we jump over the wall. And the last guy hits the ground on the other side of that wall. A mortar lands exactly where we were standing, all huddled together, not 30 seconds earlier.
Yeah.
And I remember thinking, man, if something had delayed us, whatever it was, like, oh, I forgot my whatever. And we had just by 30 seconds, I mean, it was a direct hit where we had just been standing. Crazy.
That's kind of eerie because, the one of the first buildings that we moved into, that big, tall building, we're all, my whole team are standing in a room, and I'm like, hey, here's, let's make loopholes, right? Let's pull out, chip away, pull out a brick.
Oh, yeah.
Took down the doors, wooden doors, to lay down and create a shooting platform on. And one of the guys, takes his jacket off, lays it down to lay on. And I'm like, hey, let's go out and kind of look through some of these other rooms. We walk out, and as we walk out, a mortar round drops. So there was the buildings were built with like a central ventilation shaft that ran down
That's right.
and a mortar round explodes right outside the window that we were in. His cami uniform top was shredded. And we're walk back in. He's like ghost white. If 15 seconds. 15 seconds. If we would have all been in there. So it's that sort of thing. Definitely wakes you up.
That's crazy that we had such a similar experience, even though we were in separate sectors of the city, making those loopholes, shooting back. A couple rooms back was ideal because you had a little more protection from mortars and RPGs and gunfire. So we have similar lessons, even though we were in separate, sectors of the city, pushing the Jaish al-Mahdi militia toward that Imam Ali Mosque every day. That's just wild.
Yeah, it is.
Did you read the Battle for the City of the Dead? There was a book that came out. Oh yeah,
Camp.
Yeah.
He actually interviewed me for that, so nice. I'm in it.
Nice.
He was the director of the Marine Corps Museum at the time, and I was up doing something in Quantico, and he had gotten my number, called me, and so I went to the Marine Corps Museum, met him, and sat down and talked a bit. So it's really in depth. So when I was writing, that portion of the book, that was a key reference. And there's some of the 2.7 Cav, documentation, a lot of it that was helped jog my memory.
Right. Interesting. He reached out to me too, or someone connected us. That's how it was. Someone connected him to me, and I was still in at the time. And so I asked if I could do this interview, talk about Najaf, capture those lessons or whatever. And the Navy never got back to me. I went through the public affairs officer, and he kept saying, every time I'd ask him, he'd be like, "Oh, yeah, I was just so busy, I couldn't get to it." And eventually, I just went on deployment. So I never got a yes, or I never really got a no, or maybe I did eventually get a no, or maybe it was a no by default because too much time passed. So I never sat down with him when he was doing that. But.
Yeah, I was retired already, and I tried. He's retired since because I wanted to get a hold of him and send him a copy of the book, and haven't tracked him down yet.
Interesting.
But yeah, it's well written, and definitely puts into perspective all of the, you realize that, both of us were looking through a 10 power scope, most of it. So, what we were seeing was pretty limited in the grand scheme of things.
Exactly. Did you take the Shy Tax with you?
We took it. We took it out the first mission, the first time we went out, and we were like, man, this thing is cumbersome, and it's the shots that were taken don't require this. So we wound up leaving it back with the 2.7 Cav guys after that.
Okay
But we did take the 50 cal. That was the thing, for anything that needed a bigger punch, you could do that with 50 cal and semi-auto and with explosive rounds as well. So that worked. That did we got a lot of use out of that.
Oh man. Yeah, there's so many things that happened during that 11 days. That was definitely a highlight, I would say, of my time in uniform. That, and then the next deployment in 2005-06, there was some things in there too, but nothing that compares to 11 days of pitched urban combat.
Yeah. No, that's a once in a, for me anyway.
Yeah, for me too.
Lifetime thing, and it's you learn a lot, obviously about yourself, about the guys that you're with. That's the sort of, like I said, that's the sort of combat I grew up watching, and the Guns of the Navarone and roll and just expecting, just getting blasted, street to street fighting, and then a lot of even some of the Way City sort of stuff from Vietnam. I'm like, man. Especially there was a lot of kind of subterranean elements in Najaf, in the cemetery, which was just a mess. I mean, it's the largest cemetery in the world, and it's been around for probably 1,000 years, and it's a city in itself, and it's tombs and catacombs and underground passages, and that's where the MEU is going to have to fight through, and that would have been just You wouldn't wish that on anybody, you know.
Wow. Who had that section of the city? Army SF had that section, I think.
Yeah. Yeah. Over to the west, I think that was the.
I think you're right. But I think they had that section. I think those guys,
Yeah.
I believe,
yeah,
I'm not positive.
If that was west, we were south. And I think y'all were north side of the city.
I have to go back and look at Dick Camp's book.
Yeah, I'd have to pull that.
That's exactly these days where it was, but where everybody was. But yeah, that was wild. And then, so we get back from that experience, and it's pretty surreal to have just been through that, done that. My ears still ring from a shot I took with that 50 because I was shooting suppressed with the SR-25, and it's chaos shooting through in this tiny little room. And oh my God, and the room was like this big. Well, you can't see the corners. Very small, like a bathroom type thing, but maybe a little bigger than that. And shooting through a little window at the top. So standing on a desk that we brought in. Maybe it was a door. I think it was a door. I have a picture on it. And so there's casings everywhere. And I'm standing up there doing that, and it jams. The SR-25 Mark 11 jams. But at my feet on that table is the 50. But I've just been shooting suppressed, and I didn't have my pelters on the whole time. We're conserving battery, you're doing all those things. So I don't have that on at the time. And so I'm just like shooting suppressed, boom, 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 which is still fairly loud in a little room, even though it's suppressed, as you know. And boom, it goes, and it's in the middle of the fight. And so I just kind of throw it down, and there's that 50. And I pick that thing up, and boom, because it was still in the middle of the fight, and usually you want to be a little farther back, but this was, I felt like it was necessary. And I let that thing rip in this tiny little room with no ear pro. And I remember, dust, it was like an explosion went off in there, like the dust from everywhere, because it was dusty and crazy anywhere with everything falling apart. And the whole room filled with dust. And I remember my hearing went from like semi-normal or whatever to nothing, and then to that painful like that. And I thought I blew my eardrums out, and I'd never be able to hear again. And I was like, it just rocked my world. And I was kind of shaking my head, realizing what I had just done, and realized I should probably just clear this Mark 11 and get back to work with that. But slowly over time, it came back. But even to this day, I think it's from that ringing will come, over now. I can't predict when it's going to come or when it's not. And then for years afterward, in a bar with anything with that ambient background noise was very difficult to hear. Now it's better. Now that's actually fine, or maybe I've just gotten used to it. But right after that, a few years after, it was very difficult to hear if there was ambient noise in the background of something.
Yeah. I've got constant ringing.
Really?
And we were, I think it may have been the same first building that we were in. I walked out with the JTAC. We were trying to bring one of the tanks around to engage in the vicinity of the mosque. And we were being shot at. He walks out to get eyes on so he can direct the tank. And the two of us run out onto like a catwalk. And as we do, mortar round lands like just around the corner. So he comes flying back. I go flying back, just concussed. And I didn't get nearly as much of it as he did. But yeah, that's just absolutely where you can hear nothing. I think it's like Saving Private Ryan. There's a couple of movies where they do a great job of kind of showing you how that feels. And I'm like, screw these guys now, though. Get the soft lamb up so we can laser designate.
Yeah.
And our JTAC runs in, and his bell was rung much, much harder than I thought. So he's trying to put the sight on the soft lamb, trying to mount it, and he's got it backwards. And I'm like, no, dude, you're doing it backwards. And he can't hear me. I'm screaming because I can't hear him. And he was, we had like, all right, man, let's get you, take an E, take a breather, get your, get combobulated again, and we'll get back after it. But yeah, that getting hit like that when you're not expecting it with a blast or with mortar fire and any of those things. Definitely rocks your world.
That was crazy. Man, I'm remembering all. I haven't thought about this in a while either. Since I was an O, I had to go back every now and again to Colonel Rainey to just talk about, hey, what we're going to do next type thing. I'd go back with one of the conventional Army guys. We'd go back, talk to Colonel Rainey, and then we'd come back. And I remember once, I can't remember if it was in my mind, it's like a Hilux, but it probably was a Humvee. I don't even, but I think there was like a 240 Golf in the back, maybe twin 240 Golf. Anyway, so I'm, an 01 or whatever, back up in the turret and have to go through the streets of Najaf, like through everything to get back. That was just wild. That was just a crazy time, man. God. And how many guys did you have with you? I think we had a similar team. I think we had 7. I want to say. I have to look at the picture again.
Yeah, I think I had me. I think there was 5 other snipers and a JTAC.
Yep.
And they wound up sending some other guys out because we thought it was going to, before things wound down, they were going to send some guys out at a to be prepared to relieve us at around 11, 12 days or whatever. And so so we wound up getting another JTAC out there and a communicator, which kind of eased some of the burden on us. Because like you said, I was just not sleeping, maybe getting a little cat nap and just getting busy all day long or all night long.
Yeah, that was wild. I feel very fortunate, very lucky. And for many respects over 20 years, I feel very lucky. But so we go back, and I think I stay with you guys in Baghdad. Do you go right back to doing DAs up there?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you go back. I think I was up there for a few more weeks, but I think we were getting closer to the end of the deployment. Maybe I stay up there for, in my mind, it's like 3 weeks, but maybe it's a month, maybe it's less, I don't know. Regardless, so I back up there, go back into the intel shop with to do what I was supposed to be doing up there. And then I go back to Baghdad for the PSD because we're getting ready to go home and they're going to do a turnover and we're going to head back. And that's the end of deployment. And I think that was October. Anyway.
Yeah, I think September,
October, somewhere in there.
Yeah. So we probably about the same time.
Yeah. Yeah. So maybe it's the end of September or something like that. And Najaf was early August. So it was hot. We didn't mention that.
Yeah. Oh, it was. And the flies.
I don't remember the flies, but
now
that you mention it, I do. I remember them, but I'm thinking of them more so in Baghdad area, not Najaf, but they must have been there. But I remember that heat. Oh.
Yeah. Oh, the heat was unreal. I mean, it was just you couldn't keep enough water, heat was bad. But yeah, the flies. I remember the flies there being horrible. There was some concoction that the Iraqis had. There was a blue, like pellets.
Huh.
And we put them in a water bottle, cut off the top of the water bottle, and they would smell like shit, but it would attract the flies. And like you'd have a water bottle full of flies in 30 minutes and, throw it out and get a new one.
Wow. Jeez.
So it was, not a real vacation spot.
No, but
had a good time.
Yeah. What an experience. So we head back around the same time. Then I go back to Team 2. You're going back to Pendleton. And people are probably wondering why they never heard of MARSOC Det 2 or haven't heard more about MARSOC Det One. And can you explain what happened when you guys got back? Because you talked about how this was a proof of concept essentially for the Marine Corps, and they're grabbing their best operators and best support and putting them together into this package, this very robust package, goes to Iraq. Successful by all accounts, and so concept proven. And now you come back. What did you expect to have happen when you got back, and then what did happen when you get back?
Yeah, well, we while we were there, we had like the Center for Naval Analysis came out and did a study on the results, and they had to present that to the Secretary of Defense. The Navy did a study. Mark Devine, you probably know, he was part of that. So it was a lot of, and kind of unanimous. They're like, yeah, hey, these guys perform very well. No concern whatsoever. So we went back, expecting that we were going to, redeploy, or that we were going to, kind of fragment and form a Det 2. And So we started figuring out how that would, what that would look like, how we would kind of split ourselves in half. We developed, we wouldn't be able to cherry pick, from the Marine Corps for a Det 2. So we like, hey, we're going to have to make our own selection, and we'll figure out who gets to come over. So we were doing all of these things, and every day it was, we were being told something else. So there was, we were going to go deploy again, and we're going to Afghanistan. We were going to go directly to work for another special operations organization, kind of outside of the standard channels. We were, just almost every day there was another thing was going to happen, and this went on. So we were originally chartered to exist for 2 years. And then time just continued to pass. We had some guys who were eligible to retire, and they were just like, "Hey, man, I'm out of here." We really weren't allowed to leave, but we did have some few people, a number of the guys who were requested to go to, or who had taken selection to go to other organizations and were accepted there. So we were starting to kind of whittle down numbers, and then while this was going on, kind of unbeknownst to us, at the higher levels, the Commandant of the Marine Corps, the Commander of SOCOM, and SecDef were kind of battling back and forth on what was going to happen. And ultimately, the decision was that we're going to shut this unit down and create a larger Marine Special Operations component, the SOCOM. So whereas we had a colonel in charge, the MARSOC as a 2-star. In charge, and so going from being 100 men to being a couple of thousand person organization. So when that decision was made, they kind of put the date on the wall. We had a little formation in the rain, and they rolled up the flag, and we were done. Wow. So a lot of the we weren't. There was a little bit of. There was some heartburn, right, because we weren't. Really pulled over into MARSOC into leadership positions. Some of us, like I went, I said, hey, I really wanted to kind of see the thing through. And I thought that the best place I could do that from was going to school to help start that, because, MARSOC didn't have a school. So I had a little bit of instructor time. I went, and I had spent all of my career on the West Coast, though I'm from the East Coast. So I got, moved the family out to North Carolina, and was given the task of starting a school from scratch, which is an amazing opportunity, a pretty heavy responsibility. I did a couple of years, as in uniform with that, and then in 2008, the school was pretty well up and running. We had not started our first operator course yet, which is now called the individual training course. And I retired and from active duty, and came back to work the next Monday as a civilian.
Oh, no kidding.
Still able to, which was awesome. So I'm still there. So it's 17 years.
Oh, wow.
I'm the director of training and education. So I get to still hang out with young, hard charging Marine Raiders, and help turn them into Marine Raiders. So it's good.
Man, that's awesome. I didn't know. So you're the continuity, and there's such there's so many benefits to having somebody there that knows that history, who's been there from the beginning, that can add context and perspective to why this is done this way, or why it's not. So that's amazing that you're doing that. That's amazing. So interesting enough, we got back from that one, and then I jump into another platoon to get ready to go downrange again, and I got some award in DC, and it happened to be at the same time that Craig Kaczynski's up there at the Pentagon, where they're going to these meetings and waiting for a word. I think that's probably more accurate. I think they were waiting on another meeting to find out the future of Det One. And it happened to coincide with this award thing that I got. And so there was like a ceremony or whatever, and he came to it. And that was so awesome. That was so cool that he came in there was like a dinner and stuff and whatever. But it was so cool that he did that. You guys were, point of that is that my experience with MARSOC Det One was so positive. SEAL from a different team, not the one that you'd even work closer to on the West Coast and that you were deploying with. But I show up and you guys welcome me with open arms. Craig Kaczynski, amazing. But everybody was fantastic. I won't say his last name, but Gunny, last name starts with an O, who went to one of those organizations afterward. I remember picking his brain and him being wonderful. Yeah, all those guys, from the support to the operators to the leadership, I learned so much, not just about what you guys were doing tactically out there, but about leadership as well, specifically from Craig Kaczynski. So you guys were awesome to me.
Oh, well, glad to hear it. Yeah, it was an amazing opportunity. You know, it was the sort of thing that only comes around once in a lifetime, and to be in the right place at the right time to get that opportunity. You know, I'm eternally grateful.
Yeah, so cool. At what point do you think about writing a book? Are you, you're a reader your whole life. You're a student of warfare and a practitioner. When do you start thinking about writing this book in particular?
Yeah. So I had always kind of thought that I was going to write a book at some point. It's just because I'd read so much. I'm like, I'm going to do this, you know. But after I retired, so I was an enlisted guy, you know, joined the Marine Corps right out of high school, had no, you know, real prospects for college, you know, either on the paying the tuition side and the academic side. Didn't do that well in high school because I knew what I wanted to do. But, you know, I was able to get a degree in Homeland Security Studies while I was in a bachelor's degree. I thought I was going to go into security consulting. But once I retired, I realized that I had the GI Bill that I paid into, and I retired before I was eligible to give it to my kids. So I'm like, I'm going to burn this, you know, one way or another. So I went to get a master's degree in like the easiest thing I could get, which was in liberal studies. And that really kind of turned into a master's in literature, because it's just most of the classes that I leaned towards were, you know, really getting back into reading. And that came with, you know, obviously a lot of writing. And, you know, in the process of that, one of the professors that I had graduated from the University of North Carolina, where I went, MFA program, Master of Fine Arts in Writing. And so she said, hey, you know, if you're interested, you know, UNCW, University of North Carolina, Wilmington has, you know, one of the best writing programs in the country, and, you know, you should think about applying to it. Of course, they accept every year like 5 students in fiction, 5 in nonfiction, and 5 in poetry. So I have zero chance of getting in. But I'm like, well, what the hell? I've got some GI Bill left. I send in the story that really kind of was the backbone of the book, was about the guy in Najaf that I shot. And yeah, whatever happened, I don't know, maybe they had a military quota or whatever. They were trying to diversify, but you know, I got accepted into their writing program. And, you know, people ask a lot. I mean, there's obviously absolutely no requirement to, you know, go to school for writing in order to be a writer. But for me, it really helped. You know, it helped me kind of think of myself as a writer. It was also wildly enlightening to be in a master, you know, course setting with people who I had never dealt with before, you know, professional students, you know, people who it's, you know, English professors and things like that who were pursuing this to get into writing or to get into the publishing industry. So it was, you know, great professors. You know, I learned a lot from it. And although what I learned very early on was that, you know, in order to write that book, I was going to have to go through the DOD process of vetting everything. So I couldn't write that as my thesis. All right. So I wound up having them switch me over to fiction. You know, wrote a fiction novel that's not very good, but It's not bad. I need to get back to it. But after I graduated, graduated from there, really started thinking about what I wanted to write, and I had the good fortune to meet a lady who was writing a history of the Marine Raiders, and she had asked me for some help, with that, some research, and in our conversations, I was like, "Hey, read this essay." This kind of personal essay that I had written, and she was like, "Hey, you mind if I send this to my agent?" And he gets a hold of me, and it's like, "Hey, can we turn this into a memoir?" And so that, like, yeah, we could do that, man. Give me a year, I'll knock it out, and that's how it all came to be.
No kidding. That is wild. That's how it came about. And Tough Rugged Bastards. Where did that title come from?
So that the very first time I got pulled into Colonel Coates's office when he gave me the job of team leader, he and Coates was a guy who had been down in South America, kind of when the Allied North thing, down there fighting the FLN and all of those guys. Mm-hmm. So he was just a guy that I admired, incredibly. I was nervous anytime I was in his presence, that he was, one, I didn't want to let him down. Two, he was just a hulking dude that didn't tolerate any bullshit. But, the fact that he had picked me was, I was on cloud nine. But he brought me into his office and was like, "Hey, Daly, you're going to have the opportunity to pick your own team. You know what I expect, tough, rugged bastards with strong backs and hard feet was the." And so I walked out of his office and I'm like, that will, if I ever do write a book, that will be the title of it. So that was set in 2003.
Wow.
The title, it just needed the book to go with it.
Oh man, that is very cool. And interesting, you mentioned the GI Bill. So same thing happened to me, that I didn't sign I had time. So it sounds like they had the post 9/11 GI Bill that came out, whatever, 2000, I forget what year, but, you had to serve another 4 if you wanted to take advantage of it. Is that right?
I think so.
I think that's it. So post 9/11 GI Bill, they let you past your kids, your wife, that sort of thing. Just a modernized version of the Montgomery GI Bill. And same thing, when I got out, I couldn't give it to my wife or kids. Because they said, "Oh yeah, you didn't sign the paperwork that you're supposed to sign," probably because I'm not an admin person. Everybody in admin, I'm sure, signed theirs, but I just didn't sign. I'm like, wait a second. So you're telling me that if somebody comes in and spends 4 years in the band and never deploys, they get the post 9/11 GI Bill, but I don't, having been deployed all these times, post 9/11. I guess that's just how it goes, So, that's life. That's all right. We'll figure it out.
Yeah, I used every dollar of mine. I think
Nice.
The last class I took, I had to chip in like $50 or something. So it was money well spent.
That's pretty good.
Yeah, like I said, I learned a lot from absolutely not something that people need to do. If you're interested in writing, but sure. There's a lot of I work with some organizations that try to encourage vets to write, and there's plenty of people that are able, to help with that, for guys that are or gals looking to do that, tell their story. And I think there's value in it, whether it ever sees a publisher or not, just kind of putting your story on paper for yourself, for your kids or whatever.
Yeah, I think that's actually the way to go in with that mindset, to write it that way, because you have total freedom. Just write it for your bedside table, and just honor the story and write it for your bedside table. And then start thinking about, once it's done, then start thinking about those other steps, but don't waste bandwidth thinking about all the other stuff before you have a product that's the best that can possibly be. But I also wanted to ask you, what is going on with the Marine Corps sniper program today? I know Craig sent that email the other day that CC'd you on, and talking about the memorial, Marine Corps Sniper Memorial thing. I'm more than happy honored to be asked to help out in any way I can with that. But what is going on with the Marine Corps Sniper program now?
Yeah, so last year, the Marine Corps decided to divest of its sniper school. So which not kind of mind-boggling, but the Marine Corps has had a tradition of doing this, after every conflict. Getting rid of the squeaky wheel or whatever
Crazy.
I don't claim to understand all of the thought behind it, but I fail to see how it's a good idea. But I was able to go to the last sniper graduation, which was a pretty emotional event. There were a lot of, in fact, a couple of the Beirut snipers were there. I got to meet them at that. They were talking to me, and then I saw one of them out when you came out for your book signing. So it was, these guys. One of those sniper rifles that was destroyed. The guy was like, "Yeah, that was my gun." I had the serial number tattooed on his arm. So yeah, a pretty emotional event for a lot of Marine Corps snipers. There's still Recon has a sniper school.
Okay.
So they're still producing snipers, and MARSOC still has a sniper school. So we're still producing Marine snipers. It's just not at the infantry unit level. But recently, both Craig and I, as you kind of mentioned, were asked to join the board as advisors of it's called the Scout Sniper Heritage Foundation, and their mission that we talked a little bit about earlier is to one, capture the history of Marine Corps Scout Snipers. We found that one of the things we learned was that we had a sniper school in Parris Island, South Carolina, at the beginning of World War One, which the records were just really hard to track down. One of the really interesting things is that Lee Marvin had the military occupational specialty of Scout Sniper.
Did he really?
Yeah. One of the guys digging through files was when I was in, it was 8541 was the military occupational specialty code for a sniper. It became 0317, and it was something else back in World War II.
Wow.
But where the mission of to kind of gather this history and then also to build a memorial at the Marine Corps Museum. So if people are interested in that, the scoutsniperheritage.org is a website they've been raffling off. You have yet to win, but they've been having armors build replicas. They just raffled off a Vietnam era M40.
Oh wow.
An actual Marine Corps match armor built this gun that was.
Oh my gosh. I'm going to add one of those to my collection. I've been meaning to do that for years. I have one that is not quite, I want one that's a little more exacting.
I think they're doing like an A3 or one of the more recent models coming up, but they've got all sorts of, stuff you can buy or bricks that you can buy and memorialize somebody within the monument itself.
Wow.
So yeah. If anybody's interested in checking that out, it's scoutsniperheritage.org. Lots of good stuff going on there to help commemorate Marine Scout Snipers.
Amazing.
And then hopefully, keep the pressure on to bring them back.
Yes. I mean, I can't believe that. I know I saw that in the news. I'm like, no, this can't be right. Someone's going to come to their senses. So there's no sniper school the one at Pendleton doesn't exist anymore.
Now, Pendleton or the one at the Marine Corps Sniper School at Lejeune, and then at Quantico is where the three schools. I think they had one at Hawaii for a while as well, but the only ones left is ours is at Lejeune, the MARSOC Sniper School, and then at Pendleton is the Recon Sniper Course.
Okay, I mean, what a heritage! What a proud heritage you guys are a part of with Marine Corps snipers. Just incredible, man. This has been great to catch up and to talk to you about this. Absolutely. And to relive some of Najaf together here. But man, I want to thank you for coming on. I want to thank you for your time in the Marine Corps, what you're doing post-service to bring up this next generation of Raiders now. And what an incredible heritage you guys have from World War II. And really, like it says, I think it says in the book somewhere that Det One is kind of that bridge between those World War II special operators and then what we have today as Raiders. And you guys were that bridge essentially.
Yeah.
Incredible.
Cool. Yeah. Thanks for having me on. It's been a blast catching up.
Yeah, man. Well, hopefully we can link up in person one of these days soon and grab Craig Kaczynski and hang out and have a couple drinks.
Yeah, absolutely.
Awesome, man. Awesome. Well, hey, thanks for taking the time today. I appreciate it. And this is really well done. Tough, Rugged Bastards. So well written. Everybody needs to add this to their bookshelves for sure. And also gift it. I think gifting books like this to kids that are in junior high, high school, college, that are contemplating joining the military. And I think especially today, kids, I know you'll never say it, but kids need heroes. Kids need people to look up to today with all the other distractions that they have to deal with that we didn't have to deal with growing up. And this should be on their shelves and in their library. So thank you for writing this. And also, what are you thinking time-wise on that novel? Getting back to that thing.
So I've started on not a follow-up, but a little more in the another nonfiction, I think. So I don't know. We'll get back to the novel at some point, but I think I needed a little time away from it, Yeah. I've started on another book, but I think it'll still tell some stories, kind of more in the art of kind of capturing some leadership lessons and some, there's a couple of guys have done that, really, really well. Kyle Lamb, kind of in that genre, I guess, of book.
Got it. Well, I can't wait to read it. Keep me posted, and we'll link up before too long, I'm sure.
Absolutely.
Cool, man. Well, hey, take care. Thanks for everything.
You too. Thanks.
See ya.
This episode of the Danger Close podcast is brought to you by Cry Havoc. From New York Times #1 bestselling author Jack Carr. Cry Havoc, a Tom Reese thriller. Order now.
Watch a Cry Havoc teaser here, or watch another episode of the podcast here.